I'm very pleased that we're presenting something on recovery-oriented systems of care, which really has been one of the things that the Great Lakes Addiction Technology Transfer Centers have worked on. A lot of times we looked at care as being that 28 days or that 5 sessions or something like that. And really, when you're talking about recovery-oriented systems of care, you're looking at long-term care. And they say it takes about 5 years for a person in recovery to have the same chance of redeveloping an addiction as the person who is not addicted. So you're really looking at a 5-year period of time and looking at what those systems of care might look like. So we're real pleased today to have Sherry Hunter. She's a cancer survivor and author of the book Cancer Made Me Beautiful. She's the executive director of Hunter Communications, and really has trained people around the world, so as well as across the nation. She has worked in the field of behavioral health for over 30 years, managing programs in criminal justice, addiction recovery, and training. Again, known both nationally and internationally, teaching recovery management in South Africa and Asia, which you travel a lot, so that's a wonderful thing. And she really is dedicated to service meeting the needs of a diverse population. She's skilled in developing coalitions and working with boards of directors. She's a 20-year retired Air Force veteran and was state representative on the drug demand reduction programs in the state of Illinois. She had previously been the director of Center for Criminal Justice and Training at TASC. And to her credit, she's coordinated and planned conferences both nationally and internationally with TASC, SAMHSA, Colombo Project, South African governments. So she is really a wealth of knowledge and training experience. I believe we're still being transferred to some of the state hospitals and schools. So you're reaching a larger audience than it looks like here. So it gives me a great, she's currently working at her, completing her master's in theology at Chicago Theological Center. So we're going to pass around the sign-in sheet. If you signed in this morning, you still have to sign in yet one more time to get your credits for the afternoon. So without further ado, sure.
Okay, I'm going to ask that those people in the back come up, move up. I know we want to look like we got a whole lot of people. But if you would move up, it would be wonderful. Okay, did I do that?
I think so.
I don't know what happened.
Where do you want to start at?
I want to start from the beginning.
That's always a good place to start.
Thank you, thank you. Okay, as you heard John talk about, I do a lot of things not just here in the States. And currently right now what I am doing is working on another curriculum for South Africa because they are trying to put an ATTC in South Africa. Generally the work that I do in other countries though is underneath the umbrella of INL, which is our law enforcement wing of the government. Okay, and they usually will pull me in and ask me to either join them on conferences and things like that. Now, I heard you all talk about culture earlier, and culture is very interesting. I was just telling a gentleman earlier, while I was in, I was working with the Colombo Project. Now, the Colombo Project under the government houses Pakistan, Afghanistan, South Africa, Asia, and part of China. Now, what was very, very interesting, I was doing the work in Sri Lanka, Asia. So there was 2 guys there that was from Pakistan. You have to understand, a lot of times I find myself being the only woman in the midst of some things, okay? And so when I got up to teach, 2 of the Pakistanians, they was like, I'm not staying here, I'm not listening to a woman. And they decided they wanted to go back to Pakistan. They were made to stay, and it was very interesting because even though they were made to stay, by the end of when I got done, they were buying me gifts. And but generally, it's because no one has ever spent time with a lot of people because of what their culture talks about. For instance, what I was dealing with was women in recovery. And they have recovery homes, but at the same time, they were asking the question, why can't we get women to come to enter into recovery? Well, it just takes asking certain questions. So my question was, when a man goes into treatment and into recovery, what does your community do? Well, usually the family and the community, if he's not married, we find him a wife and we get him set up in the community and this, that, and other things, so he'll be better when he gets out. Well, when a woman, if she says that she needs help, immediately she's shunned. No one can marry her. The community shuns her totally. I said, and let me ask the question, what part of that would say I want to come for help as a female, right? If I'm going to be treated like that. So it is about learning cultures, then you can ask the right questions, and a lot of times it's a matter of they've just never even saw themselves in the light of the entire world. They may work in recovery, so the question is, why are you here? Let's go about that. What does it mean for the addiction professional? What does recovery-oriented system of care mean? Now, I'm here today on behalf of GLADSE. Now, hopefully I'm doing this right. Jane Addams of the college at the University of Chicago, they house GLADSE. Let me explain what GLADSE is. That is Great Lakes Addiction Technology Transfer Center. You know, a lot of times we have all of these acronyms, right? Alphabet soup. And it's so funny because it's according to, for instance, like you will hear about an AG. Well, I come from several different backgrounds, and so an AG can mean many things. I have to always ask myself, who am I talking to the military? Well, that's the adjutant in general. Well, if I'm over here, no, that's something else. And when you are in the field, one of the things that I always used to tell my staff all the time, I don't care where you are, I don't care who's talking. Don't ever be embarrassed to ask the question if you don't understand something, even if it's just an acronym that you don't understand. And if you don't want to say it, if you don't want to ask anybody right then, write it down and come to me later. Because if you ever are going to improve in the field, if you're ever going to get better in the field, don't ever feel like that, oh, they said that I should know, huh? No, maybe you shouldn't. SAMHSA has a lot of different acronyms out there. Okay, this is what we're going to be looking at real quickly, and that is, the question is why. Language is critical. I have mostly women in here. I'm going to ask some questions down the road, and I want you to tell me what's in that would look different to you as far as language. There are achievements in modern day treatment, recovery management, we're going to look at that. Okay, because we can operate under recovery management, but we definitely cannot become a ROS by ourselves. That is a community, that is a state run, that is a county run. That is not something that an organization gets to be by themselves. Bill White, how many of you know anything about Bill White? Very good. Bill White has a lot of monographs out there. He has a monograph on recovery management. He has one on peer, and he has one on ROSC, okay? The reason why I tell you about these monographs is because those are the ones, Bill is the one that I call upon a lot of times when I'm trying to put some things together. Him and Dr. Clark. Now, Dr. Clark now has retired from SAMHSA, but Dr. Clark now teaches in California. And so, of course, I'm always on the phone. I need some help. Somebody help me. All right, what I want to do is, there's an exercise I want you to do. Did I go past this?
It's called How Do I Know? And a lot
Hold
of times when people hear the phrase, how do I
Can you
know,
turn
the
it
next
up?
thing they say is what? How do I know what? But the key really isn't to know what. The key is to know why. Because when you know your why, you have options on what your what can be. For instance, my why is to inspire people to walk in purpose. My what is stand-up comedy. My what is writing books. My what can be going out with some friends to eat. In fact, another what that has moved me towards my why is a web series that we have out now called Break Time. So every Wednesday at 3 o'clock, you should subscribe to the channel. We do a series called Break Time on YouTube. So 3 o'clock, we drop a new episode. One episode in particular, I'm about to show you a clip to. We were in Winston-Salem. So Break Time, this is how it works. I travel the country, I do stand-up comedy, probably an hour and a half at an event. And in the middle of my show, I'll just sit down and start talking to the audience. And funny just happens. Or I'll meet somebody who's really interesting. So I met this one guy, and he said that he teaches music at a school. I was like, all right, you teach music, can you sing? And then I'm just gonna show you the clip. Check it. So you're a musical director. Cool.
Yes, sir.
All right, so let me get a couple bars of like Amazing Grace. Can you do the first part of that? Go ahead.
Amazing grace, how sweet the sound that saved a wretch like me.
Wow. That bro could sing. You know what I'm saying? All right. Now, what you give me the version is if your uncle just got out of jail, you got shot in the back when you was a kid. I'm just saying, let me see the hood version real quick, if you know which version I'm talking about. Just see if that exists. Let me see what you got.
Amazing grace, how sweet the sound that saved a wretch like me. Right now I'm found, was blind, but now I see.
So here's the thing. The first time I asked him to sing, he knew what he was doing. The second time I asked him to sing, he knew why he was doing it. When you know your why, your what has more impact because you're walking in or towards your purpose.
Okay. Question for you. Do you know your why? Do you know why you chose this field? Do you know why you do what you do on a daily basis? It's got to be more than a check. And when you know your why, if you notice even from the video, what happens is you do it somewhat differently, don't you? When you're sure about your why, when you know I'm in this room for a certain reason, the reason is, just like I say, a lot of times, trust me, even on presenters, the why becomes different depending upon who's in the audience. Usually we're going to find out who's in the audience. We're going to look at the number that's in the audience. We're going to look at how is it men or women in the audience. And then your why might take on a whole different meaning. There may be some stories I may tell that usually I wouldn't tell if it wasn't so many women in the room, if there was more men in the room. But there's a why to that thing. And sometimes we have things that happen in our own personal lives that take us to a different why. You heard him say that I'm a cancer survivor. I'm not just a cancer survivor. I'm a 3-time cancer survivor, okay? 2 years ago, I just had a stem cell transplant. Okay, and soon as that was over, that's when I went to seminary, because my why became different. How I saw my purpose became different. What it really meant to me to set aside some other things and go do what I've been saying I was going to do for the longest became different, because for one, it's interesting when life stands before you and you don't know if you're going to make it or not. Well, when you do, and if you do, trust me, purpose means something different for you. You will stand and you will ask yourself the question, who am I? What is my purpose? So now, what I want to do is an exercise. There is a page on the table, and it says Recovery Checkup. Does everybody have one? Yeah, you could take those off that table. The reason why I want you to take a few minutes, you don't have to answer it to me right now, even though I am going to ask a little later in the presentation for somebody to stand up and kind of answer those questions. When we are working with individuals that are in addiction, that are in mental health, that just need an ear sometimes, what I do, and I first asked myself these questions, because there are times that you have had situations, difficult situations. Have you ever looked back and asked yourself, how did you get through it? Did you ever ask yourself, what strengths did you exhibit? Or did you exhibit any at all? What was your weaknesses in that thing? Then I want you to look at, what are you like when you're at your best? And what are you like when you're at your worst? I say those things, not only should you answer those things, but you should also, if you trust a colleague, family members, pick 2 or 3 of them and ask them that question about you. And ask them to be very, very honest, but tell them you want to know, and you will not get mad. So if I tell you when you're at your worst, I can't stand you, don't get mad with me, but I want you to describe that. Because a lot of times how you see you and how others see you could be 2 different things. Sometimes we think we are being at our best when we're there to help everybody do everything, don't we? What if that's how someone else sees you at your worst? You follow what I'm saying? So when you deal with people in addiction and recovery, a lot of times it's good to give them questionnaires like that so that they will answer the questions and also pull in their family. Have them include their family and their friends to answer those very same questions for them. Everything does not have to be about addiction. Everything does not have to be about mental health. I can get at your stuff without ever saying the word addiction. I can get at what's going on with you without ever talking about mental health issues. You understand that? Okay. I'm going to give you a few minutes to answer those questions on that page. When they doing what?
Do you want to read them to the people who are on the remote?
Oh, okay. For the people on remote, I forget that there are people out there. Hello, people. I'm going to read the questions out loud. That's true. That's true. Okay. Actually, the first one is list 3 different difficult situations that you've overcome. Now, answer the following questions. It would be good to include family members and or support when you're answering these. What did you do to survive that situation? Were you surprised at your strengths, abilities in the situation? Why and why not? What am I like when I'm at my best? And the last one is, what am I like when I'm at my worst? The reason why I ask questions like that, and if you notice, there's nothing that says anything about addiction or mental health in those, does it? Okay, but you may find out the nexus of their addiction if you knew some of the situations that they've had to come through, right? In working, one of the places that I really had to pay attention to a lot of that, and that was I had all the reentry programs in Illinois for the juveniles as well as the adults, for the women as well as the men. One of the things I wanted to always figure out was, what was the nexus? What came first, the chicken or the egg? What came first? Were you a drug addict before you became a criminal, or were you a criminal before you became a drug addict? What's your family like? Okay, I'm gonna give you a little bit of me, just a little bit. A lot of times we don't like to deal with mental health issues and say that we have it. I tend to say that most of us have some issues somewhere along the line, okay? But I was studying trauma, and I actually researched my own background to find out whether or not was I holding on to some trauma, and what did it emerge as? Well, what I realized was that my mother passed away when I was 16 years old. So I thought about it after I had studied trauma, and I said, okay, wait a minute, I can remember everything about my mother's illness up to there. This was blank, and then afterwards I can remember everything. Why? Because that funeral part of it, there rested my trauma. Do you follow what I'm saying? And to be able to admit that, because I couldn't figure out why I had such a problem with wanting to go to funerals. I couldn't go to funerals, okay? And finally, once I put a finger on what was really going on, you follow what I'm saying? Because trauma can manifest itself in anger. It can manifest itself in depression. It can manifest itself in many different ways, okay? And so I used to just stay away, because if I went to a funeral, I never saw the person in the casket. I always saw my mother. And I couldn't figure out what was going on until finally, after I started studying it. And then I became a deacon also in the church. And as a deacon, you have to do funerals, you have to do the sick and the shut in. But that helped me work through a lot of stuff. So I challenge you to even answer those type of questions for yourself, and stop believing. Sometimes we believe we go to school and we go to workshops and we go to trainings. Why do we go to them? We say, because we want to know how to help them, don't we? Well, let me just say, if you go to a training, if you go to a workshop, if you go to whatever, if it won't help you, it won't help them. Put yourself in the shoes. Stop thinking about the client that you may have. What I want you to do is think about you. You don't have to share it with everybody, because after a while, it's too much information. But you do want to pay attention to, because that is the reason why sometimes your clients can strike a nerve with you, because they actually are striking your nerve. Okay. Health is a state of complete physical, mental, and social well-being, and not merely the absence of disease or infirmity. A lot of times when you think of health, somebody tell me, what do you think of if somebody said, how's your health? You think of physical health, don't you? Do you ever think of mental health? Do you ever think of spiritual health? Oh, I'm sorry. Can I take this out? I'm not good at standing still. I'm really not. I'm just going to be real honest with you. I'm usually not even real good at standing up here. I'm usually down with the people. But, okay. Ooh, one I can use. Thank you. Is this on?
I think so.
No, it's not. Can you hear me now?
Yep.
Very good. Okay. Somebody tell me, what are the things that you think about if somebody said, how's your health? Because your emotional health, your spiritual health, your mental health, that's all included in that, right? But why don't you think about it? You've been conditioned to believe that health means, do you have a cold? Is your leg hurting? Is your back hurting? See, you probably like me. See, right before coming up, I took a leave. But I want us to realize that health is a state of complete. It's completingness. If you drew a circle, and in each area, you have 4 areas, and the first area was physical, the second area being spiritual, the third area being mental and emotional, right? And then the last area being intellectual. Do you know, if I asked a lot of people when they first come in the field, if they were honest about themselves, and I said, how are you doing intellectually right now? Not real well when it comes to the field, right? Because they still have to do the studying that they have to do. But the question is, if I took one of those areas away from you, how well would you roll? Don't be shy. You could talk. This is one of those presentations. I'm not standing up here just to talk to you. I need you to participate with me because it is about you as well. What is recovery? Recovery from mental disorders and or substance use disorders is a process of change through which individuals improve their health and wellness, live a self-directed life, and strive to reach their full potential. Let's say that physically you were perfect. Could you still live? Are you still living your full potential? So recovery, when we think of recovery, and that's why I like to bring people away from just drugs and or alcohol. There is that. But at the same time, I've got some women in here that's probably got a shopping addiction. Be honest. Then you've got people in here that have relationship issues, that they in and out of bad relationships. I don't care what happened. They could be the smartest person going, got a PhD, but yet for some reason they're always in a horrible relationship. Why? Because they've never seen themselves as going through recovery and that they needed help. A lot of times we sit and we make sure that we can, the reason why we can put on masks, that's what we make sure of. We can make sure that we can put on a mask because we make sure that we get the degrees. We make sure that we are seen in the right places. We make sure that we dress the right way, right? And if, this is me and my brother. My brother is a gospel singer, Lonnie Hunter. And a lot of times when we're together, he lives in New Jersey, we ride down the street. Have you ever ridden down the street and look at people in other cars and ask yourself, I wonder what they live like? And so you create this story around this person that you have no clue about. Well, what's very interesting about that is, when I talk about putting on masks, is because when you create that story, you're also creating it off of what they're driving, right? If they were driving some raggedy hoopty, you start off saying, I bet you they have a beautiful home. That's not generally where you go, okay? But it is about the fact that because we look at people in that kind of manner, we know what kind of mask to put on, don't we? So even when we're working with our clients, we're wearing a mask ourselves. A lot of times what I found with my staff is the fact that too often the clients are hitting their sour notes and they're hitting their buttons, okay? For instance, we have programs that help individuals with their housing and with their rent and give them bus fare and stuff like that, right? Okay, now here's the question. How many people that work where you work is struggling to pay rent? How do you think they feel when they have to give out that rent voucher? They have no gas in their car, but I got to give you a bus card. Do you follow what I'm saying? So how do you think they're feeling about their client right about then? You follow what I'm saying? Okay, so what is recovery? It's getting involved with things, friends, church, support groups, dating, the whole nine. Learning what you have to offer, seeing yourself as a person with strength, right? Knowing my illness is only a small part of who I am. Too often we make it too big of a part for them. Like that's the only thing. It's almost like, well, see, if you just stop using, you'll be okay. Well, maybe not. You might have been crazy before we started this. You know, there was one program I did with Who Am I Really? With the inmates after they got out. Now, they had to be out for at least 6 months, and their significant other had to come with them. Now, what you're going to be surprised at is most of the time they call each other husband and wife, right? But the thing about it is the reason why I always make them wait at least 6 months of coming out, because, see, when they first get out, what do you think goes on? She says sex. That's one thing. There's a honeymoon period. Oh, my boo is home. My boo, even coming out of treatment. That's the reaction you're getting, right? 7 months later, you know what? I didn't like you before you went in. And I don't like you now. You got the same, and because it has nothing to do with whether or not they was addicted. It has nothing to do with whether or not they were incarcerated. Now I'm actually starting to see you for who you are. So sometimes you have to give people a moment or two before you know what is really about to happen here. Okay, this is from a community perspective of what is recovery. Discovering who I am, lifelong effort, and let me tell you where these come from so that you know. These are, SAMHSA had us go out when ROSC was first being put together. One of the main individuals that worked on ROSC and putting it together was Dr. Ijama Achara, and also, what is David Evans? David Evans out of Philadelphia. And Philadelphia was the biggest place first to start doing ROSC, to look at it and ask the community, what does recovery look like? A recovery-oriented system of care. What do you think that is when I said that? Or y'all just sitting out there? Okay. Well, the system itself, all of us live within a system, don't we? The question is, does everybody in your system know about recovery, what it looks like, what it feels like? You see what I'm saying? Okay. So that's saying that from the grocer to the person that is running the cleaners, the one that's at the grocery store, all of these people understand recovery because that's how you look at a recovery-oriented system of care. You follow what I'm saying? That everybody is under that umbrella. Okay, I'm looking out. I see some people is old enough to know this. I remember when I was coming up, the liquor store wasn't called a liquor store. It was a packaged goods. How many of you remember that? I see you grinning. Okay, well, the thing about it was back in the day, communities were really communities to this degree. If Brother Junior drank too much, you had the ability to call the local, as they call it, the watering hole or the place where they drink, right? And tell them, don't give Junior not another drink. Why? Because you wasn't that concerned with Junior. What you were concerned with was the community. Because Junior's subject to come out and start a fight. He's subject to come out and hit a tree. He may start fights at home. Now the whole community got to get involved, right? That's a recovery-oriented system of care, where the community recognizes the hurt and harm that can happen to them, okay, that it does affect more than just that one individual. And that's if you're caring about your community. Regaining your health, a new beginning, personal, but bigger than anything is it finally they get hope. How many of you are in recovery sitting out there? Be honest, just two? Okay. Can I talk to just two of you for just 1 second? Okay. The factor of if you are in recovery, at what point did you get to your hope stage that you realize I can be more than the sum of this right here? Did someone else help you get there, or did you get there on your own? Okay. How about you? You went to a higher power, okay? Because I heard people over and over and over and over today talk about how our job is to save people's lives. That's not your job. First of all, you can't. All you can do is offer different things, okay? If in fact, think about dieting. Okay, how many of y'all been on diets? I'm on one every month. It don't work. But I don't care how easy somebody say it is until I decide that I'm changing, that I'm going to do something different, right? That I've heard every diet out there, from drinking vinegar to eating right, to taking a pill, to exercise. It doesn't matter. And for some reason, I can't, after a point, I'm right back into, where's my iced coffee? Do you follow what I'm saying? It's this, you are here to offer the hope to individuals. You are here to show them that there are other ways. But now, whether or not they grab hold to it or not, that is totally up to them, okay? And you have to accept that there are many pathways. So let's dispel the myth of what ROSC is not. ROSC is not just a substance use disorder. It's not just about that. It's not a model. Remember I said your organization cannot be a ROSC by themselves, right? That's because ROSC is not a model. It is about how do you live under a oriented system of care that then allows you to operate in such a manner, you follow what I'm saying, that is self-directed by the individuals, right? You know, I remember back in the day, treatment used to look at and say, well, you must go to a 12-step program. I used to always ask the question, what is it? How many meetings in so many days? What is it? 90 and 90. What does that get you? Huh? 90. Okay, so at the end of these 90 meetings, I used to always ask, so now that we could check off that box for the individual, and they end up being still the same, the first thing we say is they relapse, isn't it? We have a whole lot of names that we use, don't we? And why? Because when we look at the recovery, we only look at the substance abuse that they're using. And all we want you to do is stop. right? What if, for some people, I'll give you African Americans. Back in the day, African Americans didn't have a treatment organization that they could go to. So a lot of blacks that actually stopped using was because they chose to stop using, and it was something either, my father was an alcoholic after my mother passed, and he ran almost off of a cliff. His truck, was halfway over. He said, I told God right there, if you let me get home to my children, I won't have another drink. And he didn't. Now, for some, they have that ability. Do you follow what I'm saying? Because there was nothing out there right then that we could send him to talking about, let's send you to a recovery home. Let's send you to a treatment facility. Blacks didn't have that, okay? So most of them that overcame thing, it was because there was something more important to them. Usually people that stop using, a lot of them stop using because there's something more important to them than themselves. Either their kids, their wife, their jobs, a whole lot of stuff. I'll never forget. You heard me say that I'm retired military, right? Well, first of all, I went to the military like in late 70s. Okay, so if that can give you just a clue of my age. And I was already 26 when I went. Now, but back then, you know, reefer was a big thing, marijuana. So I used to smoke reefer, I'm not gonna lie. But I remember when the government, the military, decided they was gonna start testing. So I said, okay, you got a choice to make, Cherie. You can either keep smoking and lose your job, or you can quit and keep the job that's buying the marijuana. To me, it wasn't real hard, okay? So that meant marijuana went out the window, okay? Even though that was pretty much the only drug that I was using. But when you look at that, when I say that there's always another reason, it had nothing to do with my health. You see what I'm saying? I hadn't even thought of my health at that point. This was because I needed to stay in the military and I needed to keep a job. For some people, most people that make it to treatment don't make it there on their own. And what I mean by that is they've been coerced. Either the courts has told them they've got to go, or their wives or husband and told them either you go or we're leaving you, right? Or the job says either you go or you lose your job. So if that's the case, why do you think that you just gonna automatically get them to change? Okay, let's keep going. What is ROSC? You've got SAMHSA definition, but you also have Bill White's definition. Bill White's definition I actually like a little more. Recovery-oriented systems of care are networks of formal and informal services developed and mobilized to sustain long-term recovery for individuals and families impacted by severe substance use disorders. The system in ROSC is not a treatment agency, but a macro-level organization of a community, a state, or nation. Hopefully one day the United States can become a recovery-oriented system of care. Maybe Ohio can become a recovery-oriented system of care. Because what that means is you're from your governor all the way down, they understand recovery. They understand what it looks like. So if we really believed, what would look different? Anybody? What would look different? Yes. Huh? Funding would look different. Anybody else? Yes. Stigma would look different. Would there be any stigma? Okay. Huh? Availability of treatment. Let me ask this question. Is it that, because everybody's not, we know, first of all, now that they have insurance that also pays for treatment, we will never have enough beds, will we? But the question is then, how do we still usher individuals into recovery without ever believing that they had to go through treatment? Some of us believe that the only way a person can get clean is the way that we got clean, isn't it? So if you went to treatment, Joe must gonna have to go to treatment, right? Which said there's many pathways, and the fact being that if we're looking at a recovery-oriented system of care, we know that there's going to be many pathways, and we always offer the individual what's going to work for them. Because we've got to find other ways that ushers our community into recovery and let them know that there are other ways. See, right now, the sad part of, we say that there's many pathways, but if somebody called you today and said that their son had an addiction, right, what's your first response? You're going to first try to find a treatment facility for him, aren't you? Okay, what if there are none? Now what? Huh? You say church, okay. Anybody else? I mean, what'd you say? She said locked up. Hospital or other mental health services where there's not mental health. Huh? 12-step. What? Family. One of the things is you always want to ask them, if a mother or father calls you, there's an opening for you to educate them on recovery. Because 9 times out of 10, they have no clue what it is. They have no clue what it looks like. They have no clue what to do, right? And the way that you know that is the fact that here you have a person that's drug and alcohol. They come out, and on holidays, the family still got a whole bunch of alcohol sitting there. And if that person relapses, they blame the person, don't they? Because you know why? They don't feel that they have any responsibility in any of that. You out there on your own. Use every opportunity you can to educate individuals on what is recovery, what does it look like. Too often we look at our current service system as treatment. Then we'll deal with the rest of the stuff later on, right? Sometimes, remember I said sometimes you may want to find out what the nexus is. What if the nexus was the fact that everything else in their life was broke down and that's why they use? So that I can work on, I heard a young lady that was up on one of the panels say when she first went out to get help, one of the things was she was trying to get her kids back, right? So a lot of times treatment may have nothing to do with that. The only thing is we have these boxes, even in social services, in human services, if you went to DCFS, that they want you to check these boxes off, don't they? Well, first, before you could get your kids back, somebody's got to sign that says that you've been to treatment. Now somebody's going to have to sign to say that you're in recovery, and you make meetings, and you do these type of things, right? And that's the way we set it up for you. Now, what if I could help you without any of that? And you came out stronger as a mother. Now, what's very interesting to me also in that is, have you ever noticed there's never any parenting class that's actually required? Right? Again, we look at these superficial type things that we are able to check off the box, and that's supposed to mean that you're okay now, right? And if you relapse, we want to put you out, don't we? Oh, well, you're going to have to go. Well, now, if I have an addiction, don't you think I might relapse? I had one young lady, her drug of choice was heroin, I believe it was. It was either heroin or cocaine. Well, we got finally to a place of where she could get a job. And she came to me and she said, well, it's one place that's hiring, and I'm thinking about applying. I said, what is it? She said, it's a bakery. I said, oh, no, you can't work there right now. You talking triggers. Let that flower fall. What you think gonna happen with that, okay? You know, so sometimes we want to say to individuals, part of recovery is them getting back in their community, getting a job, right? Getting somewhere to live. What if their job, their first paycheck, was the biggest trigger that they could possibly have? But we don't think about stuff like that, do we? Because we want to check off that box that says, my client has gotten a job, they're stable where they're living, and I'm checking off, they're back in school. How about maybe let's put you back in school, let's look at some other things, because you're not real good with money. So maybe let's find you a financial course so that you can learn how to operate with money before we get you a job, and then the first check, you off and running. You follow what I'm saying? Okay. There has been achievements of modern treatment. Here's just naming a few. One is accessibility. The accessibility is much greater than it ever used to be. Okay? Achievements of modern treatment also professionalization of addiction medicine and addiction counseling. We have more people now that have become interested. We used to be called social workers. Didn't get paid a lot, but social workers were in place because they were usually given back to the community because that's the world that they came from. So now we call them recovery coaches and peers, don't we? Because we're going to find a name for people that we don't want to pay too much. But because bottom line is, it's been in the last maybe 20 years, if that long, of where you start seeing all of these degrees happen in the field. You know, that you got a master's degree. Nobody used to have a master's degree. It used to be the factor, to be honest with you, you volunteered because you wanted your community to be better. You wanted your community to look better. It wasn't about, so you went to work and still came home and did some things, okay? Screening, assessment, diagnostic tools. That's something that has gotten better, and millions of lives touched and transformed. One is starting to remove the stigma, so you have a whole lot of recovery organizations that don't have a problem putting the name recovery in their name, okay? You have recovery marches. There used to be a time you would never have seen a recovery march. You have recovery homes. Now, you do have certain communities that still have a problem with putting a recovery home in their area. Now, I want you to watch something. Some areas, they don't have a problem with putting a liquor store, right? But now say you're going to put a recovery home. They're going to be out there picketing. Not in my neighborhood, right? Now, let's look at liquor stores for a moment. An affluent area, the reason why it looks different than unaffluent is why, if you looked at liquor stores. One is it's not even called a liquor store. They don't let you put up a big sign flashing talking about liquor. Wine and liquor. Nope. What is it called? Spirits. Now, true enough, you're going to get a spirit. But it is called something different, okay? So that look is not there. So why should we change? Why should we change? Why should we start looking at recovery-oriented system of care? One is you have the awakening of your different cultures that are realizing that they need change. They're individuals, the families are in recovery. We're starting to educate people a little bit more. Growth, diversification, and mutual aid, that's one of the reasons. New recovery advocacy movements. You now have the government funding places to do this type of work. you used to couldn't get a dime from the government. What's one of the larger places in D.C.? They do the walks. They do a lot of walks. They give out awards of how long people have been in recovery. Nobody? Okay, class is over. We're going to have another class. No. But you've got Hands Across America. You've got where it used to be, where Betty Ford used to be the one most people knew about and couldn't afford, right? Now you have a whole lot of other places that are doing recovery. What is the biggest thing? Why should we also look at recovery differently? What's the difference in a well-funded like a Betty Ford or a community organization that's doing recovery? What's the difference? Anybody? But they are, but I'm asking you about the ones that have that big money. What's the difference in one that don't have a lot of money versus a rich person can pay and go? Huh? Well, that's one of the things, but it is about the factor that the whole person is being treated at the same time. So an expensive place, right? They got massages there for them, right? It's holistic. I mean, they're learning how to eat differently. They have a doctor. See, first of all, we don't even like to take our clients to doctors first. That's probably the first place they need to go is the doctor, because their health has been overlooked so often by them, their family, the whole nine, that a lot of times after a point they are medicating to just feel human, okay? But when you look at what could you do differently for a recovery-oriented system of care to make sure that you are looking at the whole person? I'm going to give you some tips. My women's program, I'll use my women's program. One of the things was I went out in the community, and I found, first of all, it gives me a chance to educate on recovery, right? So I went to the School of Naturopathy. Anybody know what that is? The School of Naturopathy is where you learn how to give massages. You get a degree in doing massages, okay? Now, that means that they've got to be able to have people come in so that they could give free massages, right? So I got them to agree that they would come in with their table and they would give so many massages a week to my women. Then I went to the school for hair and all of that, right? Cosmetology. They do so many heads a week for free because they've got to have somebody that they're going to work on, right? So what I did was, can I send you 5 women a week to get their hair done, right? Then I went to the local gym. You have a lot of people that are trainers in a gym, right? Start talking to the gym owners. They'd be more than happy to offer a class once a week, twice a week to your group. Do you follow what I'm saying? So now, not only are you in recovery, but we are going to work on the whole self. We're going to work on you looking better. That don't mean I'm paying for anything, but not only that, the entire community is getting involved in this thing. Everybody, the skills that they have, they were able to offer back to the women. A lot of churches have clothes closets that they could go and get clothes for free. A lot of times we do not do what we can do to educate our own community and to offer our own community the opportunity to take part in recovery of the individuals in their community. Because understand something, so what then became different about the program we had and if you paid big money? None. You actually had somebody that could give you a massage. You actually had somebody that could teach you how to eat. You also, you forget that every field that we're in, there's a point in that schooling that they have an internship they'd have to do. Right? Use them. Let them come on out and do what they got to do. Right? The first thing we'll do about prison, the first thing we'll say is, well, we'll get the churches and they'll come preach. Okay, trust me, I preach. That's not all they need. Okay? All right. There was frustration. The reason why we had to start changing, there were frustrations amongst the professionals, the frontline professionals. I heard it today. I heard people saying, our system is broken. Did you not hear that today? This is why we're looking at ROSC being a recovery-oriented system of care, and how do we make sure that we're operating within a recovery management system? Okay, limitations of acute care approach to addiction treatment. The AC model can achieve biopsychosocial stabilization more effectively, more safely for more people than they ever have achieved in history. But recovery, we know that recovery works, right? Treatment does work. Treatment works. I want you to listen to that. If I said to you, treatment works, are you believing that I'm saying recovery works? See, because those two words are not synonymous. Right? I can go through treatment and never recover. This is why we've got to do better at putting a mirror up to recovery and asking ourselves, how do we help them? What's the difference in, I'm jumping ahead a little bit, but what's the difference in a peer recovery coach and just a recovery coach? Well, because they pretty much are equal. You heard me say that I've had cancer 3 times, right? Well, one of the places that I give back is at the cancer center. So usually, how I started doing that was because this is when peer coaches came about. And you heard me say that usually one of the things that I always like to do is, before I can believe something works, I want to try it myself. So I said, I know what? I'm going to go right to the cancer center and become a peer recovery coach, right? And what I did find is that the people that were getting treatment, they would talk to me and ask different questions of me than they would of the nurses or the doctor. Because to them, you've been through this. If you've, they don't want to know what to expect, what does chemo feel like, what does this, what does that. Now, of course, a lot of questions I cannot answer for you, but I did watch how you felt like you could ask me quicker than you would the nurse that you didn't feel like ever went through anything, right? Have you ever been through something and the first person you try to reach out to is going to be somebody that what? You believe have gone through the same thing? You're not going to go to college and, let me see, I want to go to college. Well, let me talk to that 8th grader. I don't think you're going to do that. You're going to talk to somebody that's been to college. You're going to talk to somebody that's been in the field even that you're trying to go into, right? If you're trying to be in human services, the same thing is in recovery. You want to find some people and stop treating them like they're less than. They should be part of the organization because they actually bring as much to the table as you do. I know you done been through all the schools. You got all the degrees. But the book says, yeah, but Jane said this is what's really going on the street. The book's not going to tell you about culture the way I may know about African Americans. So-and-so may know about the Asian community. So-and-so may know about even African Americans. I can't tell you about every community. I ain't lived in every community. Ain't nobody shooting in my community. I mean, do you follow what I'm saying? So while we think we're going to understand culture, culture is really wrapped up in a whole lot of stuff. The question is, if you're going to remain in this field, all I ask you is to stay open-minded, open-hearted, and know that you don't know. I don't care what kind of degrees you end up getting. I don't care what kind of position you end up holding. I learned more from the clients than I have ever learned from going to school. Limitations, when you talk about that, discovery that addiction shares many characteristics with other chronic disorders. Do you believe that? But how many of you have high blood pressure? Okay, how many of you diabetic? Okay, we've got, what is coming up? What holiday? Memorial Day, because that's the outside holiday. How many of you gonna eat them ribs and that cake that Auntie made? And then end up right back at the doctor. Now, what if the doctor said to you, no, I told you you couldn't have this stuff. And this is your third time doing this, so I'm not treating you anymore. What would you do? See, now you want to find another doctor. But why is it that that's how we treat our people in addiction? We feel like they just really did everything wrong because they relapsed, and you're relapsing every day. Right? Okay, let's look at this. Alcohol, opioid. Look at the relapse rates. Is it any different than somebody that's on drugs and or alcohol? I don't think so. If you looked at nicotine, they finally got to a place, now you have a lot of treatment organizations, recovery homes, if you're inpatient, they don't allow smoke in there. Did you know that? What happens? Does it allow for a lot of people to have to step away from treatment? I'm not saying that we should have a place, but at the same time, maybe we should figure out somewhere that they can at least smoke a cigarette. Because sometimes we're asking people to do too much at one time. Yes. Go ahead, what? Wait a minute, I didn't hear you. And what's your feelings on that? And I'm not saying all over the place or whatever, but one of the things what we may want to do is when we're doing that assessment is to assess the severity of each thing. So, you know, I used to always wonder why, if you went to 12-step meetings and stuff, because I used to host them for the people at the organization, and why so many people drank so much coffee. And I was like, it's in the evening, y'all drinking up a whole 5 pots of coffee. What's going on? Well, usually smoking and drinking coffee, because they were replacing one with the other. But it's also what I realized was because nobody dealt with those two things, the smoking and drinking. But this is the way we get rid of stuff. We just say you can't smoke it no more. Okay, that really worked. Uh-huh. So how many people do you think just because they could not smoke in the rehab place ended up stopping smoking? When the fact nobody addressed that with them. We really got to do better than what we're doing. So why change? One is we're having failure to attract. And if you looked at mental health, average delays in help seeking the mental health challenges is more than a decade for most people. Why? Why do you think that is? Stigma. Most of us will never admit to having mental health problems, right? So that's where we get into how do we change the language. This is when it says, why Ross? The historical context. The president actually finally did a program that he allowed for money to be spent. You got SAMHSA, you got the commission, growing body of mental health and substance abuse research. It's interesting. Did you know now that in a seminary in theology, you can now learn about substance abuse? You used to could not. You know, there used to be in seminary of where that was never a class. So which meant that when we talk about church being one of the places, right, it was really all about the person because most of the time the pastor didn't have a clue other than to say pray, right? I remember one church and the pastor, he called me. He said, Sherry, you're going to have to come on down. We had a success. So I got over there. I said, what happened? He said, last week this guy came in and we knew he was high. But we put him in the circle, we prayed for him, and then we gave him $20. And I said, well, he'll be back. I said, you don't give out $20. Don't do it that way. But he couldn't understand that because his thinking was, we prayed and laid hands on him. So now I'm not understanding what you mean. I gave him the $20 because once we laid hands, he was healed. I was like, no, he wasn't. So, but now that seminaries have these type of courses, it's so much better. Recovery-oriented system of care shifts from the question of how do we get the client into treatment to how do we support the process of recovery within the person's life and environment. All of this deals with the person, doesn't it? But too often what we were doing was just the treatment and the rehab. We had the person, but we forgot all about the community life that went around them. Recovery-oriented system of care looks at all of that. I'm going to try to, what time is it, y'all? Okay. No, we ain't got plenty of time. I'm not going to stay up here forever. It's not like I see a whole big audience out here that, how interested are you in this? Oh, very good. I'm looking around and y'all looking like, when is she going to finish? Okay. Comparison of values. There is a thing called person-centered versus conventional. If you had to think of something that you do, that you had to compare, is it conventional or is it person-centered? Huh? You think you operate person-centered? Why? No. I'm saying in the work that you do every day, how many of you work with clients? Only a couple of you, a few of you? If you thought about working with your client, what is it that you do that if you thought about it, you'd have to admit is really not person-centered, it's more conventional? Most of the stuff that you do, why do you say that?
Partly because, like, at the beginning it says,
Oh, what happened? Oh, there we go. Okay. Well, you know, when you mention women, that's always been disturbing to me because women also have monthly periods, right? Okay, I can say that everybody's grown. It's no shocker. Okay, but why is it that if a woman is in recovery and she's inpatient, right, and she really does not feel like coming down for group, what kind of language do we use about her? She's non-compliant, she's resistant, all of that stuff. What if I get cramps? And I really am not going to do any good down here. What if I'm sick? How many of you ever had cramps? Just be honest. I know when I was coming up, I remember in high school, and I'd go down to the nurse. You know, usually if you went down to the nurse, she'd let you sleep a period down in her office. And I remember the nurse used to always say, "What's wrong with you? I get cramps." "Oh, you going home. Let me call your mother." She would always have to do that with me because mine was that severe. And as I started working in this field, I started recognizing we do women such a disservice when, first of all, just because they are have addictions don't mean that other stuff went away. Right? Even when I've gone to some places that put packages together, you know, to give to the homeless. Have you ever asked anybody, how come you don't have sanitary napkins up in there? Tampons. Things that women actually use. We want to give out a toothbrush. We want to give out toothpaste. We want to give out things like that, right? Because we don't want to look at them as being different. They are. They're different. That's why doctors should be on staff. Because every day they're not going to be up for this. Sometimes women are just now coming into recognition of some of their stuff. What if you got a woman about to start menopause? She don't know nothing about that, right? But we want to frame it as, oh, she's not ready for treatment, so we kick them out. And one had nothing to do with the other. And until usually those type of women, usually until somebody takes a moment and understands them and sees them through a different lens, they will always have their addiction going on until somebody says, wait a minute, but you're more than that. And there's a lot more going on with you. And I think if we broke it down and started working on all of the areas, you may find that they end up doing a whole lot better. You may not even have to tell them anything about their addiction. Remember I said about a nexus. Okay. Peer-centered, conventional. Peer-centered, the person has high expectations of themselves. Conventional, we have low expectations of and all we ask you to do is stop using, don't we? That's pretty low when in fact that you are more than that. People choose from the flexible menu. Do you have a flexible menu? How many of you have a flexible menu where you work? Flexible menu of service. Hello? You don't? How would you get one? See, a lot of times we think that we have to do the services. It's about, do you know somewhere that you could refer them to get all of the things? And I should have a list at my desk that tells me of all of the things that's out there in my community so that I can have a flexible menu of service and stop I don't care if you go to another place, but because I want you, this is person-centered. I want you to get what you need. Do these values lead to outcomes? If you did it that way, I'm going to tell you, yes, it does. In New York, Western New York, this is what they did, and these were the outcomes. 68% increase in competitive employment. Because a lot of times people leave a place because of the simple fact you're not allowing clients to really have person-centered and really grow and become better. All you want to do, how many of you have ever evaluated clinicians' files? Is there a reason why they all read the same? Why? No, ain't no start. They sound the same. Okay, no, but see, as an outsider, if I came in and all three of these women were in treatment, my question would be, how is it that their treatment assessment is the same? I'm not understanding. I don't understand why you figure that their recovery plan, how is their recovery plan identical, and they all three are of different culture, from different communities, from different age groups, and you're saying to me that they all got the same recovery plan. You don't think there's something wrong with that? Yes, ma'am. Oh, explain that. Go. What did you say now?
What I said was that we listen to respond. This is the why, right? What you're asking. We're trained to listen to respond. That's the best intervention versus to perhaps understand the person's needs first. It's two very different things.
Mm-hmm. So all I want to know is,
And that's why you get to sound the same.
what's your drug? Yes, ma'am.
That's why I don't work for a particular agency. I do community outreach, and part of that, we have that ability that we don't have to treat everyone as the same. We don't have to do the paperwork like that. When we work with our women, we work with the women in our community, and with the women, each woman, we meet them right where they're at as an individual. They all have different needs. We don't categorize them and say their plan is A through B or A through C. Each one person may have A through B, one person may only have A. And that's what we do, and that's why I like that more personal.
Okay. Okay. Anybody else? Yes, ma'am.
I mean, I don't know about other agencies, but one issue that we come across at our agency is the very diverse pool of women that we have coming in.
Okay.
And it's not very residential. You pick 30 women from 30 different backgrounds and families, how you get along with each one of these fellow matters. You're going to come up with a lot of problems. So one thing that we try to do is listen a little bit better, but also as clinicians teach the clients how to deal with each other in a way that is different than the way they have.
And we do. See, let me say this. You're right in the factor that anytime I'm asking 30 women to live under the same roof and live together, the same way as if I was asking 30 men to. I mean, one of the things is there has to be some continuity of rules and regulations to to what we talk about. You can't come in and just, be willy-nilly. Any kind of way you want to live, that's fine with me. No.
And I think what we had to change was how we talk to them about it.
Okay.
Rather than changing the fact that we have rules. Like
Mm-hmm.
how we talk to them about how they're relating to each other, rather than just say, no, you need to get it.
Well, one is because, like you say, we do need to look at how are we engaging in the individuals that are coming in. Because if you came, first of all, I have to look at the factor that the older the woman, the more likely she is to follow rules and regulations. And I know people say, really? Older women are, first of all, that's just who we were coming up. Rules and regulations was part of our life, okay? And so that's why generally when you have pushback, a lot of pushback, it's from the younger ones. Because a lot of times home there was no structure. There was, even when it came to when I was growing up, when it was from home to church to school, there was rules everywhere I went. So a lot of times the first thing I looked for was what is the rules, okay? Whereas young people, that's not always, we say let them live like they want to live, okay, and we got what we got. But we do have to start looking at how do we engage from the word go, because most from young to old do understand that every place has limitations. There are, yes, ma'am.
And I think also just understanding, like if we were to educate ourselves and become aware of all the generational gap, because like you were saying, the way you treat one person or the way they react to it is understanding the culture of their generation.
Mm-hmm.
You might look at it as them being defiant or whatever, but they really may not be. It might be part of their
It may be just how they was raised.
off of their generation.
Mm-hmm. Because you're going to have men and women that might come to treatment that never cleaned up a room in their lives. And now you're asking them to clean up their bedroom. Well, you might have to show them the first time out. You might have to explain to them what does that look like for them, right? I have friends, to be honest with you, that one of them has my 2 godsons, and she's never asked them to do anything in the house. And as they were getting older, it really troubled me that I'd go by and she's the one out there cutting the grass. Now you got a husband and 2 kids, two men folk. But her thing was, I don't feel like arguing with them, this, that, and the other thing, and so I just do it myself. I said, no, that makes no sense. So she was over my house one day, and the boys have always been in and out of my house. But we were sitting down, and one of the boys walked up and said, can I have such and such out of the refrigerator? And I said, well, look in there and get so-and-so. And she said, first of all, I can't believe that they even asking permission for that. I said, no, they know that these are the rules in this house. See, I don't know what you got going on over there. But in here, you don't just go in the refrigerator and get whatever you want, whenever you want, however you want. And they honored that, but they've always known that about I said, so when I say that because when we're dealing with people with addiction, dealing with people with mental health, anytime you are bringing people under one roof, one of the things that should have to happen is the first thing in orientation is to talk about even though it says clean up your room, what does that look like? Do you follow what I'm saying? You can't go in the refrigerator without permission. Whose permission? See, because maybe Joe gave me permission, but Joe live here just like I do. You didn't tell me who to get permission from. So one of the things we do have to do is do that a lot better. Non-traditional methods, recovery support and its pathways are not always within your recovery community. It is healthy to find passion. Sometimes that passion or pathway is gardening, sculpting, running, boxing, etc. We want to find out from the individual what is it that they like. Because if everything that you do, see, here we go. If everything you do in recovery is in the recovery community, you really are keeping yourself away from too many things. You will never get back into community because you've actually boxed yourself off from community. It excludes the entire world's possibilities from recovering persons. So, you want to find out what things they do like. What did they used to do? Sometimes you might have to go all the way back to when they was a kid. Did they used to draw when they were a kid? Did they used to like to cook when they were a kid? Okay, I want somebody, this is a simple one. Remember I gave you the page and you were answering those questions. Now I want at least 3 of you to tell me what you put down. You need the mic?
If we're doing remotes, yeah.
Tell me, read the question. So if we're doing remote, we want you to hear what question you're in. Okay.
So it says, first list 3 different difficult situations that you overcome. 1, I put molestation and rape. For 2, I put drugs and coping with the fact that I was diagnosed as clinically depressed. And for 3, I put homelessness, loneliness, and depression.
Okay. No,
Oh.
you put that down there, but you didn't say what you did.
Oh.
Your strength. What helped you through that?
Well, what helped me with that was turning to God and just coming to a point of recognizing that I wanted something different. I wanted to be happy.
Okay.
And so I went to God and I dug deep inside. I really didn't have a support, system set in place at that time, so that was my only choice for me. And then the question that says, were you surprised at your strengths, abilities in the situations? Why or why not? And I said, yes, I was surprised because I overcame really hard times multiple times in my life. And it was just, at that time, I thought there was no way I was going to be able to get out of it. I thought that there was no tunnel, opening at the end of the tunnel. So I was like, yeah, I'm not going to be able to do this. So I did shock myself. And the next question says, what am I like when I am at my best? Well, I'm loving, happy, silly, I'm very giving, and I'm a very family-oriented person. Then it says, what am I like when I'm at my worst? Angry, sad, mean, shut off, and no one wants to be around me. So.
I want to ask a question, and you can answer this however you want.
All right.
You started out by saying that there was molestation and rape.
Yes.
Did you receive any trauma?
No, I didn't receive any trauma care, any counseling at the time.
Would you be open to something now? And let me explain why I say that. A lot of times with us as individuals, we do work through stuff ourselves, and we think that we are much better, but a lot of times we've never even identified what some of those triggers are, okay? And we're going through life, and because we've never identified them and worked on them and worked through them, that trigger can come up at the strangest time. And when it does, and you go off the rail,
Right.
you follow what I'm saying?
I am.
Everybody around you is wondering, what happened? Whereas the truth of the matter is, there's nothing wrong with, I always used to tell my staff, we pay your insurance for a reason,
Right.
okay? And insurance allows you also to get counseling. Every counselor needs a counselor,
Right.
okay?
Well, I thought at the time, I never received the treatment, but then I did go to counseling and stuff and was dealing with being clinically depressed, but then I wasn't dealing with the trauma aspect. And then just a year ago, when I found myself in this field working with other ladies, I said, wait a minute. If I'm going to help a trauma victim, how am I going to help them if I haven't dug deep and helped myself?
Okay.
So as of starting 6 months ago, I started
You
getting
started
treatment.
getting treatment
and
for
I'm
that.
still currently in counseling so I could receive, so I make sure I have and maintain my healthy mental health for the
Good,
people I'm
very
working with.
good, very good. Anybody else who wants to read their stuff off? Don't be scared. I'm not going to send you to counseling.
No?
Nobody else is going to respond? Nobody else wrote anything?
Oh, back here. Yay. Thank you.
Oh, okay, okay.
One of them, I was a pregnant teenage high school dropout.
Wait a minute, huh?
I was a pregnant teenage high school dropout and chose to raise my child no matter what. I overcame.
Can you all hear her?
I overcame
Is
using.
that mic on?
I'm sorry, I'm not very good at
Okay,
speaking at this.
now start over for me.
I was a pregnant teenager high school dropout, and I chose to raise my child no matter what. I went to and graduated college between working and raising my kids, even though I was scared of all of it and was a single mom a lot of the time. And I overcame using drugs and alcohol as a teenager to stop so I could give my son a good life. And how I did that is I just quit hanging out all the time with friends and just worked really hard for my goals for my child and my other child I had.
Now, very good. Thank you for your response. Here's the thing I want to ask, though. What do you think your support and the people around you, how do you think they would answer those questions about you?
I don't know. Most people I know have talked to me, my friends or family, and give me compliments, most of them, except a couple people I've had conflicts with over the years. But I don't know what else to say
I mean,
about that.
and the reason why a lot of times the questionnaires that we give our clients, it will be a good thing to ask them to include their family and their friends and have them answer it as well, because especially drugs and or alcohol and mental health issues a lot of times affects more than just you. So a lot of times you may think you're answering one way, and you may have a grown child that is going to answer that so totally different. You see what I'm saying? Or you may have a mother or a father that you lived with or whatever, and they saw this so totally different. You know, so sometimes if you would, one of the things that I would do sometimes is it's kind of like putting your client back in school, or where they have to take stuff home and have somebody else answer that stuff. Because to do the real work that you want to do is not just on self. I know a lot of times one of the things in 12-step is make amends to who you've harmed. Sometimes you don't know that you've harmed them until they're able to say something about it, right? Anybody else? You were about to tell me what she was trying to push you into it. Language. We've realized that we've got to start changing the language. Okay? When you talk about medicated assisted treatment, how about medicated assistance recovery? Instead of substance abuse, because everybody does not abuse substances. Did you know that? There's a continuum of substance use. You could be talking about somebody that's using. We could be talking about somebody that's misusing. Just like you got some people, the only time they might get drunk is the weekend. Are they alcoholic? If they can manage every day but Friday to get drunk, how is that an alcoholic? Huh? You say it could be. No. They only drink on Fridays to drunk, right? Till they almost pass out, right? But then, boom, here we go. It's binging, okay? But there's that's a misuse. Do you see what I'm saying? There's levels, there's a continuum. Addiction is something you don't have control over.
When I first started doing drugs, I was doing it only on the weekends, and I had control over it. So if I was around me, or no matter what, I didn't do it first. You know, so in the beginning, I had control. I wasn't a drug addict.
Well, in the beginning you used, and then you moved
And then
into
I moved on
misusing.
to misusing and
Then the addiction kind of sets in. And then they've lost their control of what they're doing. Yes, ma'am. Oh, I'm so sorry. No, what I said was generally a person starts using. Then it gets into misuse, okay? Then we move over into addiction. And the addiction part of it is where they've lost their own control of when they use and how they use. Now I'm subject to do anything to get whatever I need to keep up my addiction. Do you follow what I'm saying? Does that help? Okay. Language and integration, key principles. In ROSC, you want to call it chronic care approach, but it's also called that in behavioral health. Sustained healing relationships post-treatment, whereas ongoing relationships with care provider. Now, what that means is, I'll use me. In the beginning, when I first had chemo, right? So initially you stay in contact with your oncologist because you have a very direct relationship with them, right? But after you reach a certain point, and they actually, I'm really surprised, I was quite pleased that most cancer organizations do use the step-down model of the 30-day, 60-day, 90-day to 1 year. Okay, that's how often you're being checked, all right? This is after you finished all of your chemo and everything. So they use a step-down model. But the difference is what I loved about Loyola was the fact that they not only use a step-down model as it relates just to the oncologist, but they have wrapped these other services around you. They have a nutritionist that you have to see, but the biggest one was the psychologist. And you have to see a psychologist, even like, I told you that they did a stem cell transplant. You have to see a psychologist before the stem cell transplant, but you also have to see that psychologist ongoing for a while after, okay? One of the things about chronic care and chronic diseases is the factor that it does affect you mentally. So the factor of you not believing that that's an area that you're going to have to see about yourself, because I was kind of shocked when I had to start seeing someone like that. You know, I was like, I had cancer. I wasn't crazy. And they was like, no, it's not that. And what I started recognizing is you start looking at depression. Because why? Huh? Had a lot, but not only that, see, I've had it 3 times. I've had a loss, okay? I've had a loss, but also there's fear that sets in, right? I mean, there's a whole lot of stuff that starts happening to an individual, and that's no different than a person with addiction. How a person with addiction, what are they going through? They go through a loss, okay? Fear sets in. They're scared to go the same places that they once used to go, right? So there's a whole lot of the emotional and mental part of it that needs to be seen about as well, shouldn't it? Okay, let's look at strength-based approaches versus solution-focused approaches. One is ROSC and one is behavioral health. Put it another way would be acute care. A solution-based approach is where we're going to take care of this and you move on, right? It's kind of like you got a cold, you went and saw the doctor, they gave you some antibiotics, and now you're better and it's over, right? A strength-based approach is what? What's going on? It's individualized, correct? Okay, They're involved with their own care, and there may be some things that I have to start looking at differently for myself. You follow what I'm saying? Like I tell my family all the time, see, stay away from me when you got a cold. Because, see, you get a cold, I get pneumonia. Because my immune system is still not 100%. So when I get something, and I've had all the shots, I've had pneumonia shot, I've had the flu shot, I've had all of that stuff. But bottom line is, for instance, we'll send people to church, won't we? But we've never asked them what's their immune system like, are they okay, and this and other thing. I happen to go to a church that they always want to do that kissing and hugging thing. And I had to figure out a way not to just stand in front of the whole church and tell them, don't kiss me, don't hug me. But I had to figure out a way of how do I manage that? Because there's a whole bunch of stuff going on with these people that I don't want that. So I had to come up with something. That was where I was able to talk to another pastor. I was able to talk to my psychologist, because those are things that set up fear for me. You follow what I'm saying? So when you've got someone with addiction, right? What if the question, and usually we teach about people, places, things, don't we? Y'all heard about that, right? So I had one client. She said, well, this is my best friend. We have grown up together. We used to get high together. She still gets high, I just don't. But she's having her 40th birthday party. What do I do? I said, here's what you do. What time the party start? She said, the party starts at 8. I said, so you have a one-do? I said, what time is it going to get crazy? Because you know. And so she said, yeah, about 9:30. I said, so go buy your friend a gift. You go there at 8 o'clock when the party starts. By 8:30, 9 o'clock, you come on out of there, you kiss your friend, and you tell her, I love you. I said, because what you don't understand, what you may be doing is, after a while, your friend may look at you and decide, I want to be like her. She didn't kick me to the curb. You know, too often we tell them they can't be around the people that they love. That's wrong. They can be around the people. There's a way to be around the people that they love. Right? How many of you got alcoholics in your family when you go to the family reunion? Do we tell them not to come? We just handle them a little differently than we handle everybody else. Okay, we're going to get done with this. What does a recovery-oriented provider look like? Remember I said you cannot be a ROSC yourself, but you can operate with principles of recovery management. And recovery management is a philosophy for organizing treatment and recovery support service to enhance services to enhance pre-recovery engagement, recovery initiation, long-term recovery maintenance, and quality of personal family life in long-term recovery. I'm going to ask a question. If I asked you for a definition of what is a ROSC, because we're going to wind it down now, what would you say? Do you think you understand what a ROSC is? First of all, what does it stand for? Recovery-oriented system of care. All right, but under a ROSC, it's actually an umbrella, okay? You can operate, though, with recovery management philosophy. One of the things that's got to stop happening, and that is where people are getting kicked out of treatment. That is in recovery management. Recovery management starts operating with the person, knowing that relapse is part of recovery. And another thing is substance or superficial recovery rhetoric. We've got to get to, you heard people say that it's broken. The money is going too often to treatment and not enough to peer services and support recovery organizations. Okay? Are there any questions? What is that, 3:30? Any questions? I see people are slowly walking out. what I want you to do, and I want you to pull down, they've got the slides. If you could pull down the presentation and start asking yourself whether or not your recovery management lines up with the principles. You follow what I'm saying? Yes, if we've got a recovery home that people are living there, 30 women or 30 men or whatever the case may be, yes, there are going to be some rules and regulations, right? But first of all, are we treating them as human beings and not just a number going through our home? Are we treating them as if that was your sister or your brother? And maybe I shouldn't ask that because maybe some of y'all don't even treat your sister and brother right. So let's change that. Are you treating them as someone that you actually want to see do better? And the question becomes, if you ask them, what does do better look like and feel like for them? Have you asked that question? I'm going to give you some questions. Let me see if I can find them. I don't need to tell you about acute care. I think you know that. I want to give you some questions. Changing our questions. What have you started asking your clients? Can you tell me a bit about your hopes or dreams for the future? Do you ever ask that question? What kind of dreams did you have before you started having problems with alcohol or drug use, depression, etc.? Has there been a change in your dreams? What kind of dreams were you having? Before you came here, before all of this started, what are some of the things in your life that you hoped that you were going to be able to do? Then finally, if you went to bed and a miracle happened while you were sleeping, what would be different when you woke up? What would your life look like? How would you know things were different? And let them answer those kind of questions, because this is about them. Very seldom do I think that somebody at a certain age decided that they, you know what, I think I want to grow up and be a dope fiend or a jailbird. Because I know when I was working with the youth, now that was one thing I used to always have to, that was an exercise that I would always take them through. I'd ask them, what is it that they wanted to be when they got out and put their lives together? And then they'd have to write for me, what does it take for you to become that? Does it take a high school diploma? Does it take a master's degree? What does it take? And can you get that, okay? Now, usually the first thing in my boys' prison, I'd always at least have one of them that say that he was gonna be a NBA star. Till I'd have to make clear, I don't think any recruiters come into prisons. Not happening. But it was very interesting of the things that they would write down, and then when they would have to go and do the work of research and find out what it takes to be that, how often they would change their mind. Or how often they would realize they could do more than what they thought they could. So it is about making sure that you frame the questions of the individual right, and how do we make sure that our community is a place that people feel safe enough. Peers add value, and so does recovery coaches. The biggest difference in a peer and a recovery coach, to be honest with you, not only is the peer has liked experiences, but generally the education level is a lot of times different, okay? But also as a peer versus a recovery coach, a peer generally can operate differently than a recovery coach. See, you know how when we went to school for CADC and counseling and stuff, you were told if you were in recovery, you couldn't go to the same 12-step as your client. A peer can. You see the difference? There's some clinical stuff that you sign on to as you become degreed and certified that a peer gets to be with them. They get to take them to church. They don't have to just tell them. They get to take them to a 12-step meeting. They don't have to get up and walk out if one of their clients walked in. They're also not bound by confidentiality the same way you are. This is why peers work so great, is because the client can talk to me and tell me what's really going on. And I'm not bound to have to walk back up in the office and say, girl, you know, Jane told me that this, and this. No. See, a peer is probably going to be the one that works you through the factor that, girl, this past weekend, I had a glass of wine with my family. Now, I probably am not going to tell my counselor that, right? But a peer, I'm able to tell them that, and they're able to talk me down. You see what I'm saying? You know, because they don't have that same confidentiality. Peers should not be keeping a lot of paperwork. I know organizations like for peers to, only because they tired of their own paperwork, so they're giving away half of it. But a peer should not be doing a lot of paperwork. They should be valued as equal partners in the system, continuing education and career path. You should have something, because most people use peers as individuals that are just getting into the field, right? But you need to offer them training so that they can do better themselves. And they also help you combat stigma. They should be on the team with you, actually. Trauma-informed cares. Peers know how to find non-trauma-informed environments within the workplace because of their unique filter. They have a filter you don't, due to their own experience. Peers can also be empowering. See, understand something. Remember stigma back in the day, if you went in and applied for a job, you would never say you were in recovery, would you? One of the things that people in recovery started explaining, and it makes so much sense, you can't be what you can't see, right? So if I'm in recovery, I need to see somebody in recovery that's the CEO of an organization that's also in recovery. I need to see somebody that is a clinician that is also in recovery, because what that says is I too can strive for that. But if everybody's afraid to talk about their recovery, peers are someone and somebody that generally starts getting rid of that stigma. 25 million people in recovery in the United States today. We know that now because so many people are not afraid to talk about their recovery. They're not afraid to say that they're in recovery. And what if we all stood together? Now, I'm one that I say that I'm in recovery. I remember the first time, 12 years ago when I got cancer. It was very, very painful. They had me on Vicodin and morphine at the same time. Okay? So I'll never forget, as it wound down, I was still taking Vicodin and I was going to work, riding around. Who knew I was high? But finally, because of this is the field that I'm in, I kind of knew something was going on. So Thanksgiving rolled around. I saw the doctor, and I asked him, I said, okay, so what are we going to do about these pain pills? He said, what do you mean? I said, well, I'm still taking Vicodin. He said, well, I believe that if you're in pain, you should take a pain pill. I said, okay, let's hang out there for a minute. You just said to me, though, that the cancer was gone. So, what's the source of the pain? He said, you know what, Sherry, I had never really thought about that. And what dawned on me, and so now me and the oncologist, he calls me in for clients. It's like, hold on, no. But what I found out is physicians know their specific thing that they do. He does cancer. Do you follow what I'm saying? He don't know nothing about no addiction and none of that kind of stuff. He was like, okay, well, we're gonna do a step down for you and change your pills. And I said, okay. He gave me a prescription. I'd never filled it to this day. I went home. It was Thanksgiving time, so I cooked for the family. And it was so funny because I was like, every evening, you know, they would say, oh, you look so tired, you probably need to go to bed. And then that's when it dawned on me, you know, actually I'm high. So that Thanksgiving, I went on and cooked, they ate, but I took off time from work. I made sure everybody was out the house because the next 3 days, I had a refrigerator put up in my room, a little small refrigerator. I put water up there the whole nine. I hit my knees and I said, God, I'm not going to let you go till you bless me. I'm not coming out of here still taking Vicodin. But that was, to me, it was God's way of letting me see just a glimpse of what my clients go through because my nose ran, my muscles tightened up, I couldn't walk up and down the step. But at the end of those days, I was okay. But I still say that was his way of letting me see a little bit about what they go through and how hard. I can't imagine it being much worse for me. You follow what I'm saying? So a lot of times when you talk about somebody that's addicted, their addiction may have come from somewhere else, because I remember telling my doctor when he said, and see, he was writing me prescriptions, 100 pills at a time. I said, no, I'm not going out that way. You're not going to read about me on the news. Addiction recovery counselor arrested, trying to buy Vicodin on the corner. I'm not going out like that. So, again, when I say use every opportunity you can to educate on addiction and recovery, you would be surprised at how many of our physicians know nothing about it. You need to know how to start asking them, what goes on with this? How long do you expect me to take something like this? Because I had no idea, even though I was in a lot of pain in the beginning, that I'm sitting up here taking morphine and Vicodin at the same. I knew, you know, if I was thinking at all, I would say, okay, an addiction's gonna come up with this one. But right then, all I knew was, whoo, the pain is gone, I could go to sleep. You'll be surprised at how many end up with addiction for those very reasons. The other thing that happens that I learned is cancer patients can get anything they want. Any drug they want. The doctor is afraid to say no. Because, see, you can't tell somebody how much pain they got. So with cancer, if you just say, no, don't give me that one, give me such and such, they'll do it. They'll write the script. And before you know it, you're looking at someone that is actually also feeding their addiction. So then I started teaching in the center, because my question was this. They do what is called, when you come in and before you start treatment and the whole nine, you have to go through counseling, you know, where they tell you what to expect, da-da-da-dee-dee-dee. And that's with a nurse. But you know the one thing I noticed that they never asked the question of, do you drink and do you do drugs? So I asked them finally, I said, and this is the way I found out. Me and my family were going to Mexico, and this is in between chemo. And I says, can I sit and have a drink at the pool? She said, well, actually, we usually tell our clients not to drink anything because it's a contraindicator to chemotherapy. I said, and y'all was going to tell me this when? I said, so what happens with individuals that, like the guys that like to watch the football game or the basketball game with their guys on the weekend, right? And that's right after they've received treatment. You didn't tell them that they can't do that anymore? Well, that's not our place. Yeah, it is. I said, okay, do we ever ask about addiction? Because what's the policy if someone has an addiction? Do you give them time to go for treatment for the addiction before this treatment? They said, no, we've never discussed that. Do you understand what I'm saying when you've got out there? There's a lot of things that are going on, and there's a lot of reasons why people end up under addiction. And we need to take every opportunity, and a recovery-oriented system of care says that it was my responsibility to make sure that they understood what addiction looked like, what recovery looked like, and how you should see it, and how do you change. Doctors are doctors. I mean, they love it. Nurses are nurses. There's just some things that they don't get into because they've never been asked to. How do we make sure that a recovery-oriented system of care is one in which it involves all of them, so that they start asking the right questions, start doing the right things, and moving forward our community in the right way? Because after a while, a doctor's going to stop giving you stuff. So what do you say? How many of you have coaches or peers in your organization? I've got one organization that uses them. Okay, not good. You call them mentors, okay. How many of you have them on the payroll? Why? Are they not important enough? Do you give them stipends at least? Do y'all care how they get there? No, but those are the type of things we fight for in a recovery-oriented system of care, that the peer and the volunteers and mentors, they should not be out there doing work for free. You wouldn't. Okay.
Some providers utilize them, but are not on the payroll. The state is moving so that they are billable services within an organization, which is going to be really cool.
Right.
So that they can basically, without a large investment of any type of program, they'll be able to just kind of get their money back by billing their services, which is nice.
And you say get their money back, but that's if they're paying them. They could. And the thing about it is, it's just a matter of how important do we see peers. It's really about, do we impress upon organizations the importance of peers, okay? The importance of recovery coaches. Do you follow what I'm saying? Because everything, that means that I'm going to start treating my peers and my recovery coaches with dignity. And I see you as someone with dignity, and I want to treat you as such. And so in turn, when they're working with someone, remember I said you can't be what you can't see, right? So if I'm working with someone that's in recovery, they should be able to see that I'm respected, that I'm being treated with dignity, that they care as much about me as I care about you. You can't ask me to be out here caring about these people like this, but yet the organization doesn't show me any respect or dignity itself. Okay. No, but really, the question becomes, and that's what, remember I said, a ROSC is not the organization. A ROSC starts up here. So if in fact the state of Ohio ends up understanding ROS, adopting ROS, it would be a natural occurrence that then peers get paid, recovery coaches get paid, because that becomes an expectation of the recovery-oriented system of care. Do you follow what I'm saying? This is why you can't be a ROSC by yourself as an organization. You can have recovery management principles, but not a ROSC, because it really needs to come from the top, so that then when organizations are even responding to proposals, written in the proposal is about recovery coaches. Yes? Okay.
You said that peer recovery specialists or peer recovery people don't have to follow federal confidentiality.
Okay, go ahead.
However, if I'm running a treatment organization or a service organization that follows 42 CFR, then my peers are going to have to follow 42 CFR because we're a team. And if we're
Here's the thing. How do you think that you could get away with the factor that I don't pay my peers?
well, I would be paying my peers, obviously.
Okay,
And it wouldn't matter if it's paid or not. Federal confidentiality is whether you're a volunteer or you're paid. It doesn't distinguish payment or not payment. It only distinguishes that a person is in a program of some sort.
Mhm.
Is giving them support. So whether it's peer recovery support or treatment or continuing care, that team all has to follow, if it's addiction, has to follow 42 CFR. Otherwise, that peer recovery coach is hanging out there, and they could get into a
well, this is why also a lot of states are moving to certification of recovery coaches and certification of peers because of that very reason. Because peers, if I have a like situation, life learned different than someone else, mine is going to be a little bit different with you. My relationship is going to be different. Right now, they don't have a bunch of paperwork set up for no peers to have to fill out. They don't have a bunch of paperwork. Now, I know Michigan, because Michigan did move to where they certify their recovery. Yes.
Ohio also certifies their peers, not the recovery coaches, their peers. And if your peer is a recovery coach, they can be certified, but they have to have lived experience.
Okay.
When we first started recovery coaching with our Access to Recovery grant, they did not have to have lived.
Right.
But those individuals are usually employed by an agency anyway, which are bound by 42 CFR. But our peers, who are recovery coaches or peer intervention individuals, can be certified by the state.
And
And they will have to follow
okay.
ethics rules of 42
Let me say this, and I want to be real clear on something, and so that there is no confusion. A ROSC, like I said, is the umbrella, and with that being so, it is not prescriptive. Every state can be different, every county can be different on how they operate under the ROSC, okay? Now, the organizations themselves then would probably adopt recovery management principles, okay? But operating within a recovery-oriented system of care. So no, are all of them the same? No, every state is not the same. They look different. Even their certifications look different. That's one of the things that I have found too. The requirements of what they want their people to do look different, okay? That's the thing about a ROSC. It is, and we're not here to prescribe to you what has to be or what does not have to be. So my mistake, and so I'll own this one. My mistake was when we first developed peers. When we first developed peers, it was the factor that they were not bound by the same rules and regulations as a counselor or a recovery coach, because they generally were only receiving stipends, or you know what I'm saying? and we looked at it that way. But as it goes on, we've had big fights across the nation because it is not prescriptive, and we're not here to prescribe how each state or county does what they do. Are there questions? Go. Oh. Okay. Sorry. The thing about ROSC is the factor of it is transformational. Let's look at this slide real quickly. A lot of times what people want to do is just add something on to their existing program and say now they are recovery management because I've added something, or select something. Practice an administrative alignment in selected parts of the system, whereas a ROSC looks at everything. It is transformational. And the question is, when it comes to recovery, when it comes to addiction, will there ever be a time that we actually can transform what we've done into something that we think would actually work? There's the question. And it has to be everybody from top to bottom. I'm not saying that your governor will do any work. I'm not saying that the mayor does any work, but they should understand what is recovery. We've had one state, Minnesota, I like that governor. Minnesota brought us in, and from the government, that's where they started. Before they ever got to even thinking about sending it down to any program, they first started saying, I want to understand what is this. That was the governor. And then he brought his team in, and we had to train them. So we still have yet to get to the practitioners. Do you follow what I'm saying? But that's the way a ROSC would actually happen, so that then when they start allocating different money, they're allocating it for a reason. Because they decided to let it be transformational. We're going to stop right after this. Okay, because for one, I should have given you a break, a whole darn 3 hours, 3.5 hours. I don't understand. But see, we're going to have to transform how you all do conferences. The healing forest. What do you think that's talking about? Okay. That's the real healing force. Go ahead.
There's also this theory that if you take a sick tree in a sick forest and you dig it up and you put it into a healing forest and you nurse it and you get it well and it's now a very happy tree. And then you dig it back up and put it back in the first forest, what's going to happen?
And that's how we actually have been doing treatment and recovery, is we take that person, we take them out of all of that, and then we wonder why they relapse when we put them right back into the soil that was destructive in the first beginning. One young man said, "How do you think I'm going to change?" When, in fact, the drug house is next door, the crack house is across the street, and the liquor store is on the corner. At what point do you think you sending me back home and you telling me about people, places, and things? Is that going to work for me? So it is about, when we talk about the healing forward, do we start looking at individuals? Now, the bad part is, no, we can't pick up everybody and relocate them, right? But that's why we have to do a lot better in looking at their strengths and how we're seeing them and what we're allowing them to work on, so that they can not only become better themselves, they can start improving their community. We've got to start changing them from the inside out, and not just the factor of they stop using. Okay, any questions, and then I'm gonna let you go. Yes, no, maybe? Y'all wanna go, don't you? I know y'all tired of sitting in those chairs. Come on up. Come on down.
And you guys are troopers that you have bared
Yes,
with us
they
the entire
are.
day. So give yourselves a round of applause for hanging in there. Thank you so much. Cherie, thank you. I do want to give you your final number, the verification code number for the session. Oh my God. Like you're ready. It's 6704300. Oops, sorry. All right, the code was 6704300. In your packets, there is a overall evaluation form that was at the very back, so if you could please complete that. In addition, there are two other documents, a white and yellow, that are specific session-related evaluation forms. And as you leave and drop up those evaluation forms, you'll see that there's a certificate of attendance for you for the morning and another certificate of attendance here in the afternoon. And especially I would like to thank Tanya Burney for organizing the certificates. Thank you, Tanya. Okay. And again, thank you so much for spending your entire day with us here at Columbus State. Goodbye to our satellites. For those of you that have stayed with us through the entire day as well, we appreciate your commitment to helping to grow and develop our workforce in the state of Ohio. Thank you.